Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of TriStar South Community Chronicles, where we talk to interesting people and learn about them and their businesses. I'm Sam Davidson. On the other side is Ryan Fuller. We're blessed to be here at the Thompson Appalachian Hardwood facility. We're joined with our guest, and we're truly blessed to have him as our guest today, Nordeck Thompson. We're glad to be here with you, sir.
Glad to be with you.
Some might call this an exit interview.
Yeah.
True. That's right.
That's right. That's right. So you can tell the audience why that's an exit interview after probably in this first question. So first off, tell us about you and your business.
Well, it's been quite an adventure, and I had a good friend of mine down in South Georgia. He's our pastor at the time, Pete Sharburn, just a wonderful man, and he always talked about life's great adventures. And I asked him one time a little question him about that. And he says, you know, Nordic, we are on a grand adventure. Life is a grand adventure. And I really took that to heart. And my wife and I, living in South Georgia, working for my father, family business, forest products industry, sawmill, logging, all the things we do here presently. With my dad, I'd always worked for him. I laughed this past week. I retired, by the way. They took me off the payroll. I laugh and tell them my executive team, which is my kids, they all fired me. So I'm going on vacation for a while. But anyway, I'll never forget 1972. I started paying Social Security, and I'm 65 now. You can do the math on that. Right. I made $376 that I paid Social Security on. I've been paying ever since. I'm gonna start collecting, like hopefully in a month. But anyway, I say that jokingly. But during that period of time, my father had trained me on so many of the ins and outs about what it means to be a lumberman. It's not just running a sawmill. It's not just owning a chainsaw and going out in the logging woods. It's so complex and so dynamic and so changing, and I've seen so many things happen in my career to the industry, to the way forest is utilized, the different products, the different industries that have come and gone, and the way in which our industry as well as the consumers adapt to that. And in 1991, we were pregnant with number 5 and working in South Georgia. We had 4 small children, and I just felt the call, and that grand adventure that Dr. Sharber talked about. God just called me out of South Georgia and sent me to Tennessee. Of course, it did bring my wife back to her mama, or close to her, and that was really a special thing. And Tennessee has been incredibly good to us, Franklin County especially. Didn't land here right off the bat, took a year or two hiatus from the hardwood lumber business, but then started doing and working the research and found Franklin County to be in the center of a very, very vast and very rich resource basin of agricultural timber families and timber companies that were growing a wonderful variety of species, the types of things that were necessary to support and help the hardwood lumber manufacturer to be successful. And that's when we found the mill here in Huntland and were able to acquire it. And I was employee number 1, my wife was employee number 2. And there were just so many things, so many people that helped us get our start. My father being one, he helped me and in so many ways get going. And Mary Claire, my wife, and her support. She's had number 5 by now, and guess what? She's pregnant with number 6. So it was important that we succeed. We were highly motivated.
Sure.
And we laugh and say that we've had kind of had a hard time finding a place to live, in that we couldn't rent because we couldn't meet the fire code because there were 8 of us. We were over the occupancy. But anyway, we finally found a home out off H Lane, not far from where you guys live.
That's
and we were just embraced by that community out in the county there, and people there were super, super kind and just embraced us, and we started a life here in Franklin County. And I would get up and come to the sawmill every morning in Huntland, and we're still here today going at it.
That's incredible. So you found Franklin County based on a geographical advantage, right? So you were in the center of where you wanted to be, and is that the sole reason it drew you here? But you also mentioned your wife's mother was
Yes.
close.
Well, she lived in Hickson,
Okay.
over near Chattanooga, and my wife grew up in Hickson, and so it was a good fit. But for what we do and the types of products that we manufacture, it's very important to have a very good, healthy, vibrant forest floor. We needed, just like with the nursery industry here, or the row crop industry, or any industry that's ag-based here, you got to have, the one thing you've got to have is you got to have the right growing environment, you got to have the right soil, and you got to have what is growing in the timber industry needs to be something that is desired. And here we had all of the varieties of oaks, maples, walnuts, poplar, all of the ash, all of those species that were very desirable globally. At the time, we weren't doing global business when we first started, but there were a lot of people in the industry that my father knew and that I had built relationships with that stepped forward when they found out that we were going to open up a mill. I reached out to several of them, and they found an advantage of supporting us and helping us, and they reaped a benefit for it financially, but also they were very kind to extend to me what I needed to really get it kick-started.
So
Yeah.
weird question. So I know you talked about, and I don't know anything about forestry by any means, but you were from Georgia. Now, were you from like southern Georgia, middle Georgia, north Georgia?
I think that in our county, the highest ridge in our county was at about 60 feet of elevation, so you can do the math. I'm a flatlander.
Okay.
So I was accustomed to river swamp, swampland type timber, and I just grew up down on the coastal plain.
So the further, the further I've been south, it seems like you see, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you see a lot more pine-based. And is it softer woods, or is it more hardwoods up this area and softer woods there, or is hardwoods spread all throughout? Because you kept going on about oaks and ash, and I just think about the way our forests are here. You see a lot of hardwoods as compared to my experience. The further south you go, it seems more of a pine base. Granted, I'm sure there's a bunch of hardwoods. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, absolutely. Where I grew up, your hardwood, your better quality hardwood was in the river bottoms.
Okay.
And in that area, you've got what we would call red river bottoms, where the soil has a red clay type tint, and that's all due to the topsoil that came out of middle Georgia, up in that area, the Piedmont, came down those river drains, and as the rivers would rise with the freshets in the spring, it would bring all that rich soil down south, and then when the rivers receded, it would leave a layer of little thin sludge. Well, guess what? Over thousands of years, that got to be some really good soil in those river swamps.
Okay.
And it grew some really nice cherry bark red oak and cypress and various sundry types of hardwood. Here in our area, we're an upland hickory oak forest.
Yeah.
So it's more of an upland. We've got higher elevations. We got a slower growing season. And the tree quality for hardwood is different, but it's different in so many positive ways. And it makes for a higher percentage of like veneer logs that you don't have in the deep south. The trees there grow so much faster. So the grain characteristic is different in the way that wood actually appears, because you got to remember, what we manufacture, people are going to look at.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've always been accustomed to the hardwood business. It's just in a varying stage, because like you said, where you were from, you're 60-foot elevation, so the hardwoods are a different variation as compared to what they are here in southern Middle Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious of that, because like I said, I hope this is informative for everybody just as well as it is me, because I don't know, honestly, I could look at a tree and tell you what difference. I know what a hickory is.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Well, I want to say this. I would be considered a layman as well. Like, I know very, very little, and I would love to give you the opportunity right now to let all the folks watching and listening out there, let them know everything that you guys do here, because I didn't truly know, and I was so shocked the first time I got a tour here. It was incredible, the facility and what's actually here. And if you want to give an example or give some examples of all the different things that you guys are doing here on the property.
Well, it's a broad subject.
It's
As long
expensive.
as they're not trade secrets.
No. There are no secrets in our industry, trust me. And that's a good thing. Our industry is first off, it's dominated not by large corporate structure. Our industry is very localized, very regionalized. Most of my competitors, many of my competitors are some of my best friends, but they're not necessarily in this particular region. But I'm friends with the local guys that we compete with. We really don't compete in markets, in other words, where we're selling, because we do different kinds of things. We compete more on the timber and who gets to harvest it and where the logs end up, so all of that falls in. But for us, we took a different approach when we saw the resource that was growing in this area. And it took a long time to get there. And you can go back and look on our website at the history that chronicles the changes in our business. We started off as a small green sawmill. We were cutting green lumber. That's undried. You can't nail it up. You can't glue it up. You can't make a piece of furniture out of it. It's raw. It's got to go to somebody who can put it in an air dry yard, who can put it through a dry kiln, who can do those next things in that line of process to get it where it's ready to be manufactured by someone else into doors, window sashes, all the things that back in those days were using solid wood. So we were selling green lumber to people like Bassett Furniture, Singer Furniture, all of these people that were making so many of the products. You'd go and buy, go to the furniture store and you'd buy a piece of Bassett Furniture. Well, you need a crib for your baby. Well, those cribs are manufactured in Macon, Georgia, using tupelo and poplar and these different species. And then they had plants scattered around. But as things changed, we started seeing this change in manufacturing. And we see it today. I mean, it's what's going on today with the tariffs and all these other things as we're beginning to work to try to reshore or onshore a lot of this manufacturing. That manufacturing started moving. And back in those days, people don't think about it, and I guess the audience probably would be clueless, but there was a time when you couldn't ship anything over about 100 miles. Okay? I mean, you'd load it on a truck and you would ship it. I can remember putting 10 cents in a payphone, and you had to know where the payphones were. And as you would make sales calls, you would have to hit those payphones to set up your business contacts, and you used the yellow pages. I mean, there were so many things. My kids look at me like I got 3 heads when I start talking about that.
Like we talked to the Corners, in our first episode, and they were like, we were the first place to have a fax machine.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Oh, and the fax machine was huge.
Yes.
Because we could fill out an invoice and we could fax the invoice to our customer rather than mailing it. Well, that would save us, because their 10 days to pay us would start when they received the invoice.
Right.
So we could fax them to them and we'd get our money about a week quicker. I mean, you don't think about it.
Don't take long for that fax machine to pay for itself.
But what started happening, guys, is we started seeing when Savannah, you're a Savannah guy.
And Savannah, Tennessee.
Oh, Savannah, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah, not Savannah, Georgia.
All right, well, we're going to back up. But Savannah, Georgia, deep water port, but the only thing they had was break bulk, and they were shipping kaolin, they were shipping coal, they were shipping heavy-duty industrial materials, aggregate that was coming out of middle Georgia, and timber products and things that were bulk, and they were putting them in open container ships. In other words, the whole of the ship would open up and they would just pour this stuff in and off it would go. And then came a modern marvel, the 40-foot shipping container, and the world changed.
Right.
And all of a sudden, steamship lines started emerging. All this World War II, you can go back and look at the maritime history of what happened after World War II, merchant marines and all these kinds of things, we began to see shipbuilding around the world. Different countries started building ships. What are they going to build them for? There's no war, but they got to build something. Well, what were they building? They got to build
Commerce.
something to carry cargo. So all of a sudden, what is the cargo going to be? And all of a sudden, it became cheaper to load a load of lumber in a 40-foot container in Huntland, Tennessee, go to Nashville, go on a sling train, go all the way to Savannah, to the port, get unloaded, go on a steamship line, and go to you pick a country. We ship everywhere.
Wow.
Anywhere we can get paid, we always laugh and say, you know. But all of a sudden, it's cheaper to do that than it is to ship lumber to Kansas City. I even have to ship our freight in a 40-foot can to our California customers because it's too expensive to go by truck. So what I'm getting at is all of a sudden, freight changed the whole dynamic of international global commerce. And then all of a sudden, the manufacturers left North Carolina that were manufacturing furniture. The Bassett, you can go back and read Mr. Bassett's book, Factory Man. It's one of the most fascinating reads. If you've never read it, it is a worthwhile read. Anybody in the audience, but Factory Man by Mr. Bassett of Bassett Furniture fame just outlines the whole offshoring of manufacturing in the furniture sector in this country. And for us, we had, during the 33 years we've been here, we've had an opportunity to see those customers or the vendor, we're the vendor, having to get that lumber to the place where it was going to be consumed and manufactured into a finished product, be it a piece of furniture or a bedroom suite or a set of kitchen cabinets. And we, like everybody else, it doesn't matter if you're growing corn, soybeans, cotton, rice, it doesn't matter what agricultural product. If you don't have a customer, you don't have a business.
Absolutely.
So what we had to do is we had to adapt, which meant we had to, over time, over decades, the 3 decades we've been here, we've had to advance our business slowly, methodically, through 2008,
Yeah.
okay, through COVID, what we call black swans. We're in one right now because the whole world's upside down right now with what's going on with the trade tariffs, and it impacts our business. But long term, it impacts it in a very, very positive way. In the near term, it's kind of a pain because we're having to redirect cans, but we had decoupled from China pretty extensively here several years ago during COVID and all. We're already not as heavily leveraged into them. But out of little Huntland, Tennessee, and with a very, very humble start, we were able to take the very small amount of resources and continue to reinvest and reinvest and reinvest. And along the way, there were people in Franklin County, the folks that started Citizens Community Bank, first line of credit I ever had. I was driving up Dinah Shore Boulevard. I was praying, Lord, if you want this business in Huntland to make it, I got to have a line of credit. And I remember praying as I was going up the boulevard. I was gripping that steering wheel on that old F-150 pickup truck, and I was going up there, and I went past the old Dairy Queen. It was probably gone when you got here.
No, I remember that.
The old Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
I'd going by the old Dairy Queen. You know, I'd come off the square, and I was going by the old Dairy Queen, and I'm just praying, and I get up there to where the old tire store used to be, and now it's Citizens Community Bank. I walked into Mr. Dennis Walker's office and Mr. Steve Collins's office, and I told them who I was. And when I walked out the door, I walked out with what I needed for that day. Not a bit more and not a bit less, but exactly what we needed to make it. And I'd used up all the money that Daddy had helped me with to get started, because I didn't realize you had to pay a deposit to get the water on. You had to pay a deposit to get Duck River. Oh, they wanted 3 months worth of bill. And I love the Duck River people. They've been super good to us. My shout out to the folks at Duck River. They're wonderful people. And so many people, the folks at VR Williams, Jim Cunningham, and I just go on and on and on. Cole Clark, that helped me, Bob Neese, all these people that took a chance on us to help us as we were getting started. The folks at our church. I mean, folks thought we were on the witness protection plan. And I'll never forget it when we went in to take the kids to school to get my youngest, my oldest ones in school. We had to put down somebody that to call and what have. The only contact person we had. Well, we put down Miss Margaret Lynch's name because she was the real estate lady that helped us find the house. Sold us the house. Only person we knew. And I could go on and on and on. But the folks in Franklin County have been beyond kind and gracious to our family. And they've embraced us and helped us. And I'm not saying it's always been easy and it's always been, nothing to it. I mean, it's been a challenge.
Sure. I'm also a transplant, so I understand. I chose to live here, and everybody's been so welcoming.
Yes.
I guess I've been here officially 21 years, which seems crazy.
Wow.
It seems crazy.
Goes by in a hurry.
I know, right? You mentioned something. You said you took a 2-year hiatus from the lumber business. Mm-hmm. What did you do then? And if you did anything else before being in the lumber business, can you tell us what that is?
Well, like I said, I started with my dad early on, and he was one of those hands-on kind of guys, and I was a hands-on kind of son. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't a big book learning guy. I was a hands-on, get out there and get in the middle of it, and I just loved the mill process and all of that. But I will have to admit that back in the heat of the summer in South Georgia, sometimes I felt like slave labor.
Right.
But I always got paid good. And Dad was always good to me on that regard, but went off to the University of Georgia and met my wife there, and that was, the beginning of really something incredible for me. And like I said, adventure all the way.
Right. And I think behind you, is that your degree over there in forestry?
No, that's my dad's.
That's your dad's?
That's my dad's, yep. Yep, he graduated and he actually was a president of the 4-H club in the state of Georgia.
Really?
And I've got a little, I don't know exactly where it is, it's around here somewhere, but it's a little thing. He was 16 years old when he was president and got a scholarship. And the folks from one of the pulp mills, he had done his senior project in 4-H with a focus on the naval store industry. If you remember, what we call turpentine in South Georgia was really big at that time.
Sure.
And it was a rosin product that came out of the pines,
Yeah.
the longleaf pines. And it was quite an upbringing, quite an adventure down there. But I ended up on my hands and knees. Most humbling thing I've ever had happen to me. It was the best thing I ever had happen when I came to Tennessee. I went to work in the grocery business, and I was an assistant manager in the grocery department. And that was the job that I could find in Chattanooga that would allow me to follow the adventure. And folks at home looked at me like I had 3 heads. They thought I just absolutely lost my mind. I would take my family from South Georgia and the security of my dad's business and leave all of that behind to take the call and come to Tennessee. And I worked at some small stores for my father-in-law. He was very gracious and kind to me and put me to work. And best thing he ever did, I came in one day, I said, Charlie, I really have appreciated you helping me and getting me, but I said, I'm about to starve to death. I said, I got to find something else where I can make a little bit more money. We got number 5 on the way. I said, we're really having a challenging time. And he looked at me and said, Nordeck, I'm gonna tell you what, something. This is all this job pays. It said, if you want to do better for your family, you're gonna have to find something else. And that was a hard thing. I know it was a hard thing for him to say, hard thing for him to do. But basically what it did, it made me realize that, God's call on me was to trust him, not to trust my daddy, not to trust my father-in-law, not to trust somebody else's business. But if I was going to take the adventure, it was time to get with it.
Right.
And I called my Uncle Tommy, I called my dad when I'd made up my mind that I was going to try to get back in the lumber business. And I wanted to do it up here. My Uncle Tommy was very successful forest entrepreneur in Middle Georgia, Milledgeville, Georgia, had a really nice, big, large operation down there, and my dad was just further south of him, and they butted heads and competed with each other since childbirth, and they did it because they both competed with each other. They had two similar businesses that competed with one another down there, and I told my wife, I said, well, if I get back in it, I'm sure not going to go back down there and try to compete with the two of them.
Right.
And my Uncle Tommy gave me a great piece of advice. He said, Nordeck, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to do it, he said, go to the U.S. Forest Service field office. He said, there's one out in Hickson. He had already looked it up. He said, go out there and get all the U.S. Forest Service census data. And by county, every county in the hardwood regions of the country, they do a inventory and analysis every 7 years. And he said, if you will go and get those, you can find every county in the region that you want to be in, and it'll give you what is growing and what the condition of that forest is. And I did that. Best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Because of that, I started looking primarily in Middle Tennessee. I didn't look toward Knoxville. I didn't look toward South, North Georgia. This region was the perfect region for that. And out of that, we found Huntland, and then found an operator here that had a mill that had been defunct for about 10 years, and we bought that and started it up. And I see Nick just came in, and I'll have to say he's grown now. He's 37, and he's president of the company, and he's the primary reason why I've retired. He told me the other day, I'm either going to have to work more or he's going to have to cut my pay, so I just quit. But anyway, we laugh about that. No, I went ahead and retired and turned the reins completely over to him and his team, his executive team. But anyway, so that's kind of how we ended up in Franklin County, yeah.
That's awesome. All right, now you'll notice we're joined by another guest. We have with us Nick Thompson. Nick, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your role here at the company now.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Nick. This is my dad, Nordeck, and I'm the president of the company. And so just basically, as my dad's retired, I've been taking over daily operations and kind of leading by Dad's example, and just working, trying to get it all figured out. So working with my sisters, working with my brother-in-laws, working with our incredible team every day to make our products.
So this is a we'll call it a new promotion, right? This is relatively new. When was the
I think I knew I was going to get the promotion when I was 3.
Gotcha.
So it's not, I'm 37 now, so it's 34 years coming.
Right.
But it's a recent completion. So it took me 34 years. My first memory was in a sawmill in Hazelhurst at my granddad's mill, and I was on my dad's shoulders on the log yard, and I remember seeing a knuckle boom moving logs. That's my very first memory, and that's when I started my process, trying to get ready for it. So yeah, but Dad fully retired March 31st, so it's pretty much
April 1 was the.
It's
8 days removed.
8 days removed from the completion of it. So yeah,
that's incredible.
34 years, and I guess 2 months. My birthday's January 29th, so
I
there
got
you
you. So you're a lifetime lumberman as well. So let me ask this to both of you guys, okay? Throughout your lives and your careers, what is something that has significantly affected the business? And obviously, since you're such a tight-knit family business, that probably ultimately affected your family as well. So anything you can think of that a major milestone, maybe a hardship, something along the way.
Go ahead, Dad.
The economic challenges that we see that come and go, the same thing affects us. It affects any business here in Franklin County at different times in different ways. 2008 would be one significant housing issue there. Also, we had, COVID. Fortunately for our industry, we were designated as essential. So we were able to continue to manufacture and process. Our people were able to work and receive the benefits and everything that were in
Right.
place. So that really was very much of a good thing to help us stay stable. And just, the banking community was just tremendous about helping us work through that. There were so many people that stepped up to the plate and helped us get through that one. But yeah, the ebbs and flows of changes in our industry, and like a lot of industries, probably the biggest, and Nick, you can chime in on this, is the just change in consumer preference has had a big impact on our industry, wouldn't you say, Nick?
Yes, sir.
What's your take on
100%.
that?
Well, we're I would consider us to be a top end commodity. So we're a raw material, and so our job is to basically service furniture factories, flooring factories, and millwork houses around the country and around the world. And so as substitutes come in, and as styles change, there was a period where everybody really wanted cherry. Cherry is not in vogue anymore. We don't grow much cherry in this region, but we have friends that do, and they have a very hard time moving their fiber. So to your point, that absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that also goes back to the incredible resource that we have here. Nick and I talk about our blend and our recipe. We don't get to pick that. God picked that for us because He gave us all of the different varieties of things that grow here. And we don't go back and replant it. It naturally occurs.
Well, and from the forestry standpoint, compared to other forms of agriculture, I tell everybody all the time, I'm like the cattle game's a long investment return. They ain't no longer investment return than the forestry business.
Absolutely.
Because you may have harvested a forest when you were in your 30s, like your son, and he might be fortunate enough by the time he's your age to be able to harvest that. So like you just said, you don't get the opportunity to pick your materials, your genetics, what is growing. That's just all what God provides us with. And I was going to ask a question about that as well. When y'all go in, now, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're in the sawmill business, but are you in the logging business
Yes.
as well?
Yes,
Okay.
we have a logging company as well.
So when you go in and log, are y'all still going with you let whatever grows back grow? There's no, I guess my question is you're not putting anything back in, you just let God take His way and grow whatever may grow back out, which of course where we're from it'd be natural hardwoods, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the seed crop, all the growth stock is already in the forest floor, along with young juvenile trees and it's what we call a successional situation, in that once you cut the canopy off, and everything has to have sunlight. Grass won't grow up underneath a shade tree, okay? Nor will oak trees won't grow up underneath another big oak. And if anything knocks that tree down, cuts it down, whatever, impacts, opens that canopy up, and that sunlight hits that forest floor, here they come. Those juveniles pop out of the ground. It's a miracle of nature. God has a plan, and He grows trees.
Yeah.
And we don't have to touch it. All we have to do is make sure that we do everything that we can in the forest management side to do as little disturbance as possible to be able to get and achieve what our landowners, our growers want to do on their farms and their lands. And typically that is to have good habitat. They want to have a healthy forest floor. They want to protect their soils, their drainages, all of those things, good water quality and all those things. You won't find a landowner that says, go out there and tear my land up.
Oh, 100%.
No, they want it taken care of. We want to take care of it, and that's why we employ professional foresters. One of my son-in-laws that's his area of responsibility. He has a full staff of people that are all certified, trained, educated, college educated, that know what to do in land management and managing these forests correctly. And then it's a matter of going out there and executing and doing it right. And state of Tennessee's blessed, and it's a resource we need to take care of.
That's such a different story than from where I grew up in West Tennessee, right? And in the county I grew up in, there's a paper mill. And, the natural growth in a lot of tracts of land over there is no more. They have these highly modified, genetically modified trees that they're putting in there, and they grow so fast, and they're getting yield out of them so quick. So to hear that's a little refreshing. You know, I grew up with, you know, they're yielding some properties in 10, 15 years. Like it's just incredible, these genetically modified
grow
trees.
up?
So Savannah, Tennessee.
My girlfriend's from Corinth, Mississippi.
Yes.
So right there, yeah.
Yes, so
I know.
there's a
right
ton-
there, Pickwick.
Absolutely.
At the paper mill right there.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a ton of tracks all the way down in northern Mississippi where they've clear cut them. They come back in
Planted
and
pine.
they're planting pines, and you
Well,
watch them grow. They'll grow straight up, and at the top there'll be maybe 5 limbs, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's the wildest thing.
Well, then the right application, you know, that is a really good really good industrial forestry. In the right land, right application, right soil, it's not a bad thing. It's just in this region where we are, it doesn't lend itself to that type of forestry, and that's a blessing to us.
Right. These hills and hollers and mountains and things that we have and the type of soil that we have, it's a much longer rotation, but the value of that fiber is so much higher than in the pine stands, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about a monoculture where you got one thing. And typically, to your point, it's the same thing we see in southeast Georgia. They just grow tremendous tonnages of pine per acre. And it's remarkable, the genetics and what they've been able to do, but that's really industrial forestry. Ours is a little different. Ours is much more,
It's environmentally sustainable.
yeah,
I guess
exactly.
I guess that's a
it's a natural way to do it.
I guess that's an interesting term that I've never heard, is industrial forestry. I mean, I guess I just think of all forestry as industrial, but I mean, when you're talking about growing trees to grow, you know, paper or wood for houses, I mean, you know, what you grow has got value and beauty. And you wouldn't want to use an oak. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not tons of houses around here that have oak 2x4 studs, but you wouldn't want to use an oak 2x4 stud house because of the cost.
No.
And you'd want that wood to be much more exposed and to see how
Right.
good looking it is and stuff like that compared to like the pines.
Sure.
So it's interesting, you know, how that varies. Like I said, that's a term that I've just never heard of, industrial
Yeah.
forestry. But like I said, I'm not a forester.
Well, you know,
It's interesting to learn.
Yeah, well, you know, one thing that's really interesting to that point for the audience to understand, when the Tennessee Forestry Commission was started back turn of the century, okay, we had about 7 million acres of hardwood forest in the state of Tennessee. Today we have over 14 million.
It's doubled.
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 Oh wow! Because that was going to be one of my questions.
How
You know,
about that?
have you seen a challenge? Have you seen a challenge?
Well, but there's a lot of things, there's a lot of reasons why. And you can go out here in the mountains here in Franklin County, up on the ridges behind us, and you're going to find old homesteads. You're going to find old corner rocks. You've been all over these mountains. We all have. You're going to find old chimneys, and you're going to find, those folks lived up there, and they subsistence farmed up on the sides of those hills and those benches. And they got water out of those springs, and you're going to find barrel hoops, old metal barrel hoops at those spring heads, and they made moonshine, they grew corn, they raised hogs, they did all that in those, across that landscape. There are no more of those folks living out there in those mountains. Well, what happened to their feral fields? They had to come in and basically girdle those trees, kill those trees to get that sunlight on the ground, not so they could grow more trees, but so that they could grow a crop,
okay.
okay? So, you know, it took, if you was gonna make whiskey, you had to have corn.
100%.
And how you gonna grow corn? You gotta have sunlight. And that's what they did. So over time, once people came off the landscape, you know, our rural landscape changed. People came to town, they went to the cities, that whole demographic changed. And what have we got today? We don't have old growth forests in Franklin County. Now there may be some stuff up in Savage Gulf and some places around that you'll find some hemlock you just couldn't get to. But if you came to this country, people don't realize it, but the Ford Motor Company had a spoke mill. They bought spokes for the Model T Ford tires and rim systems were built out of, guess what? White oak from Franklin County.
Oh wow.
And there were spokes manufactured. There was a spoke mill here in this area. And they manufactured spokes for over from millions of Model T Ford vehicles that were built.
Well, I guess it's just one of those things. Whenever your mind is so small, like I'm 36, you know, you're like, oh, that's old Forest, but like you said, no, this ain't its first go around.
If you had gone to Cowan, if you had stood down in Cowan right in the middle of the road on the railroad track, and you had looked up toward Swanee, up the goat track, turn to the Century, you wouldn't have seen a tree, because they were running coke ovens. What does a coke oven take? It takes fuel. We had surface coal, but we have a piece of land or two around that we know of where there are old shaft mines, horizontal shaft mines, where they went in there and dug that coal out. What were they using that coal for? They were using it, they were making steel, they were making those coke, they had those coke ovens. You can go out here on top of Grundy and you'll go up there where the coke ovens are. So what does it take? It took the timber. People went out there. There were jobs here where your job was you were a tree cutter.
Yeah.
The only difference is you were running a cross-cut saw and you were cutting wood for a fire. What fire? To run those coke ovens. So it's completely, the forest that Nick and I manage and work in today is a reflection of what happened 100 years ago.
So, your question was, what change have we seen? For me, I think that to answer your question would be the hardest change and it's really just the generational knowledge transition. So the making the transition from my dad's generation to my generation is difficult, because whereas dad's generation, you know, they grew up working with their hands, working in the mills, in the fields, and working physically. We're having to kind of learn that, teach that. I had to learn it. Like, I didn't grow up being very handy or anything like that. So there's a lot of knowledge that we're having to teach now that I feel like for the older generation was learned at just a young age, because you just were told to go do it. And then now the current generation, which is just as capable, just as able, it's just taking a little bit more patience to teach it and allow it to be, allow the knowledge and understanding to be developed when it comes to the mechanical and technical knowledge. We don't have a school for what we do. We have forestry schools, but we don't have sawmill schools. And so, and people are like, why don't you start one? Well, you only need 5 sawyers for a region. So you only need 5 to 10 guys that do it for an entire region. So you don't need a school to develop that many people. You just you have to grow those folks in-house. So for me, the biggest challenge and the biggest change has just been making the generational step into, developing people to be able to do the work. And we've been very fortunate. We've got a really wonderful staff of folks, and I like to believe that we are patient enough, and I'm sure a lot of the guys around here would think that I'm an a-hole, because I'm not supposed to cuss, but at times. But that to me has been the biggest change, is the generational knowledge transfer. And we've been very fortunate because of Dad and some other men and women that have really helped us along. But that's been a real big, that we're right in the middle of right now.
Yeah, Nordic. So tell me this. We just got his perspective a little bit of how things changed from your generation to his. Can you describe the generational change between you and your father, and maybe your uncle, because you mentioned that?
Yes. I think technology, just the whole way in which you run a business today, versus the way that they operated, we're able to take and do so much more with so much less. I mean, what used to take just a whole slew of people can now be done just much quicker, much more efficiently. It's just amazing, and I've really got to just brag on this next generation, the generational leaders that are in our company now, and their whole generation. They're the smartest, most capable group of people that I've ever seen. To Nick's point, and I don't have a lot of patience, so it's been challenging for me, and Nick will vouch for that. But it's about imparting and them understanding what we're trying to accomplish and not trying to put too much on them too fast. My dad would always, he'd just get so frustrated with me at times. I'd go, Dad, you're going to have to slow down. I just can't. He'd look at me and he'd say, son, you just going to think faster. I don't know what to do with that. I mean, I'm flat out. I'm doing all I can do. I can't take in anymore. But he had such a wealth of knowledge to share that his eagerness to share it sometimes, was a little overwhelming to me. And I know it frustrated him, and I know Nick and I have had our frustrations with one another at times too over things
Surely
like
not.
that. Surely not. But now, the whole technology opportunity for us in data collection, all these things that are so important now, you got to know that you know that you know. You got to be able to keep up with this. I mean, you got to remember, we started off with 12 employees. We got 140 now. We started off doing one thing, cutting green lumber and selling it to 4 customers, and now it's a whole different universe for us. A lot of customers, a lot of things going on out there, a lot of markets to serve. And if it weren't for their ability to be able to understand and handle all these technical concepts and things that have to go into keeping up with inventories and keeping up with, it's just even the HR department that Mary Lee does is just overwhelming the requirements of things that we have to do to maintain and keep a good, stable employee base and to keep everything up to par.
Right. Yeah, that's.
So technology was dad's, and then for us, it's just learning how to actually do the non-technical side of it, just the actual, like, what is that and what are we trying to do?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you could predict what it will be for the future generation, what do you think that will be like?
Okay. I believe that the future generation's biggest challenge is a monumental shift away from growth to sustainability. And that right now we've been in this mindset in business for a very long time that if you're not growing, you're dying. And I believe that will have to change in the next generation because infinite growth is not possible.
Right.
Okay, eventually you reach equilibrium and you'll either come down or you just maintain it, you monitor your business. So I think the biggest challenge for this next generation is not seizing opportunities, it's taking care of the opportunities they have. And I think that we are working to size our business. We're not trying to grow it infinitely. We're trying to effectively look at our forest floor, and focus on the forest is one of our core principles. And what does our forest landowner need in this area? And I think the biggest thing for the next generation, when we are successful in getting it to that position, it's being okay with taking care of the golden geese.
Yeah, I think Nick's right. I think a lot of times my dad would always tell me, he said, son, there's a fine line between a vision and an illusion.
Well, and you put it really good, and I thought the way you said it, but everybody always has like, well, if we can keep doing this much, we can buy another truck or another loader or run another mill. And I think to your point, it's not focusing on exponential growth consistently. It's saying, what can we do to to basically fit us for what we need to continue at our size? Because like you said, infinite growth is not possible. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting philosophical thought, to put in everybody's pipes and smoke it for a little bit,
Yeah, there you go.
There
you go.
Yeah, well, and to your point, Nick told me the other day, and we were talking about it, he said, right along, we were talking about this very same thing. It's more important for us now, the quality of what we do, not just for our customers, but for everybody that's a stakeholder.
Oh, absolutely.
Every person that walks on this yard in Huntland, Tennessee, or cuts a tract of timber and brings us every farm, every grower, every timber grower, every truck driver, every forklift operator, every person that's a sorter or a grader here, everybody is a sawyer, everybody. Our goal is that everybody has the appropriate experience here. And if we concentrate on that, then our business will thrive here. And,
well, not only that, but one thing, and you said it a minute ago, like would you say 104 or 140?
140, right? Is that what you said? Employees?
So
somewhere in there.
So not only do you have to, because now this is a third generation, your kids work here, you want to make sure that that's providing for them, but you've got an additional 100 plus employees that you're trying to provide for their families so they can make a good living. So to Nick's, like what Nick said, it's not always worried about growing constantly. It's about maintaining what you have and providing for what you have well.
That's exactly it.
that's very well put.
And I think, to the tune, and I look at things like this, and I think that I'll say this in my lifetime with agriculture. I don't always think the thing that I think you're going to see with agriculture is efficiency and doing the best with what you have to maximize what you can do.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because like land, there's not making any more of it. And of course, I will say positively, like you said, the property is doubled in size for the forestry aspect, but from the agriculture side, they're not making more of it. So you're just gonna have to you may not be running a 200 head of cattle herd, you may be running a 50 head of cattle, but maximizing the efficiency with the smaller amount is what you're gonna have to do. And like how many sawmills y'all got?
Oh, we just have one. My grandfather always said, if you can't see it out of your back window, be careful about it.
Yeah,
And
we have
so
one location.
We have one location, so we have 2 sawmills on this
Well,
one side.
let me refrain. Let me rephrase that. How many actual sawmills do you have here?
We have 2. So we have 2, and we run our original mill. We run it 2 9-hour shifts, and we just started up the tie mill.
Okay.
So our new mill we just started up. So we have 2 mills on site.
So I guess to add, to add on to that, it's about keeping those mills busy and not looking at like, hey, we need 3 more mills here.
Yeah, well, again, I think that you have to protect your capital. Number one, that's number one. And and a good way to not protect your capital is keep spending it. So it's it's really hard to ever pay off your debt if you keep adding to it. And so that's number one. But I think that what I truly believe in, a deep principle of mine, is fill up your capacity. So before you're ready to add more, fill up what you have and make sure what you have is dialed. And then what will happen is that growth will happen to you. You won't force yourself into it. So
Right.
that's that makes sense, but I think that's the biggest risk for the next generation is feeling as if they have to create something new when what we're doing is it has been the same product, made the same way, other than technology of doing it. It is an old product. So there's not a lot of innovation.
I think the first wheel was made out of wood.
That's exactly, pretty
Or
much.
stone.
Made out of stone, but Noah was he was a lumberjack.
Yeah,
So,
he did
cut
build
the
a
trees
boat.
down.
That's right.
So that's the answer.
All right, Nordic. So this one's for you. You've given a good history of getting here and building this business to what it is today. Is there anything you would have done differently? And if so, what is it?
That's a big question. I would have to say, if I did anything different, I wouldn't want to change where I've landed. I mean, where we have ended up has so far exceeded my wildest imagination of possibilities. And I really do believe that even the things where I've made some big mistakes over the years, and it's cost us some opportunities and whatnot. But even in that, I love that country song, "Thank You, Lord, for Unanswered Prayer." I think there's times when those things, God has used those mistakes that I've made and poor judgments, poor decisions, to help mold where we've ended up as we work through those. So, I don't know of anything right now that I would want to redo on, because we ended up in a wonderful place. And,
Can't focus on the negative.
yeah.
Got to
yeah.
focus on the positive.
Yeah, it's all good.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's all good.
That's an incredible way to look at it. And we were talking off camera. You mentioned about mistakes. I think you mentioned some advice you got from an uncle along the way.
Yes.
Can you share that?
Oh, yes. My Uncle Tommy, he was such a character and loved him. He's my dad's older brother, and he, a man of few words, but I asked him one time, I said, well, Uncle Tommy, just give me, I was probably in my early 30s and starting a business here, and I said, could you just give me some of that good sage wisdom? And he thought about it, and he took the old pipe out of his mouth, and he said, well, son, let me tell you something. He said, you can't make any big mistakes. And I was sitting there listening to that. Okay, bring it, Uncle Tommy, I'm ready. He said, and you better make very few little ones. And that was it. But, over the years, I've thought about that. And what he's basically telling me is, and I've shared this so many times before, is if you can't make it work on paper as a business plan, you better learn how to not chase an illusion. My dad always said there's a fine line between a vision and an illusion. And, so many young people, so many people in general throughout history have had good ideas, what they thought were good ideas. But when it was all said and done, they'd love to have a do-over on that one.
Right.
And I tell you, that calculator won't lie to you. Math works, gravity works. And Nick and I've talked about this so many times, and he's put it up. You can't make demand. You can't create need.
Right.
You got to take the need that's there, determine what it is, and then see how efficiently and effectively you can meet that need. But don't fool yourself. Don't think that you can go out there and make something out of nothing.
That's a beautiful point. I mean, when I toured this facility the first time, and I told you off camera, it absolutely blew my mind at how much I did have fun. It was I went around and I got with Juan and we walked around and we were doing all this different stuff and it was incredible. But obviously managing and being able to grow, because I don't imagine this place looked as big as it, when you started. You had to add a building when you could, and you had to do these sort of things. And obviously, you said the calculator doesn't lie, but you guys have been doing it right here because you're able to grow continuously. And that really, I asked you about sharing the advice that your uncle gave you. So here's a question for both of y'all, but it's a little different spin for each one of you. Nick, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? And then Nordeck, what is the best piece of advice you could give to a potential entrepreneur out there listening?
Well, so the segue to that is exactly what Dad said. Make sure there's a need, fill a need. Don't fool yourself, and then with all the leadership, my mom made sure I did a lot of stuff with leadership and all that. And the other thing, great piece of advice is the I'm third rule, servant leadership. God first, others second, then you last. And so I think you feel the need, be honest with yourself on what you can get done and what they need you to do, and then live the I'm third lifestyle. Don't care who gets the credit.
That's good.
That's a good point. Absolutely.
And for you, you've talked a lot about making sure you have a business plan and all that, but is there any other, little gem you want to throw out there to the folks listening that may want to?
Well, for me, it's been a faith walk. It's been really, as I shared earlier, it's been a grand adventure, but it's been a faith walk, because I'm going to tell you, when your name's on the note and it's coming due and you're trying to figure it out, and you are working hard every day, and sometimes hard work's not enough.
Right.
And just knowing that, God's got a plan, He's got a pathway, and whatever that is, just get in there behind it. And, just put some legs on those prayers and go to work. And don't fool yourself, though, that God will use people, He uses circumstances, He uses all things in your life to help get you to where He wants you to be. And that's been my adventure, training these kids and growing with them. I mean, while they were learning, I was learning. We all grew this business together. And it's my advice to anybody would be, really think about your priorities and really think about who you want on your team and in your foxhole. And don't try to meet a need that's not there. Don't try to conjure up or create something that's really not there. Don't fool yourself. You can romantically fall in love with an idea, and but you can't cash flow it. And if you can't cash flow it, it will not succeed. And banks they're not just out there giving out money so that you can go spend it and have a big time. They want a return. As a friend of mine told me, local banker here, dear friend of mine, he told me one time, it's not the return on the money, it's the return of the money. So that he wants to make sure he's going to get his back with interest.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
In a roundabout way.
In a roundabout way.
So much, and we've talked about, as we've weaved through the history here, it's been very much family-based. And you guys have been, you mentioned your wife being the support system early and how that helped you through. And now you're welcoming your son as the president as of, 7-8 days ago?
That's right.
And what's...
6, actually.
Oh, 6, okay. What is y'all's fondest memory that incorporates your family here at the business?
That's the reality is that there's no fondest memory. I think that my first memory is at a sawmill. My first thing I ever wanted to be was a sawmiller. So I've only ever wanted to do this because it's all I ever saw the people, my grandfather, my dad do, and then we were always here. So the fondest memories were just the life that has been around it. And I would say that, being able to do work takes 80% of your time, and being able to spend that 80% with my family and do it together, experience it together, laugh together, talk to my cousins who are in this business and do all that. So I would just say the whole life has been a fond memory because this is just an awesome place to be. It's hard work, and Dad has told me I had to be tough or I'd have to get out of his way. So,
You made it.
I guess so.
Now he's telling me to get out of his way.
Oh, okay. I know. It's just you got to be, if you want to do it, you got to do it every day.
Yeah, you got to do it every day.
Right.
So there's no shortcuts.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there
All of
anything
it.
you want to add that from your perspective, from
Well,
the family
I think-
dynamic?
Well, I really think for me, from a memory perspective, it's just been the involvement of these children all and Mary Claire, and not just my family, but my work family. I mean, we've had people here, and I think about, like Larry Judge, who he created the first board we ever saw and worked for us for 30 years and recently retired last year.
That was sad.
Just unbelievably awesome, just being able to do life with such an incredible group of people in such an incredible place. And just those little snapshots of memories of seeing my grandkids when they were, and they're all little, there's 12 of them, and when the ones that live here, we end up with, daddy daycare here in the afternoons a lot of times, and you're subject to come around the corner and see 3 different dogs from 3 different households that bring their dogs, and here come, my grandkids around the corner. We're that kind of business. We're not pretentious. We just value family and value our people, And we just want to remember that. I mean, what do I want to remember? It's just how blessed we've been.
Memory wise, when I was a kid, I always wanted to put my hands in concrete, you know, because like who doesn't want to put their handprints in it? So since I was little, like right when we started it, I have effectively put my hands in every pour of concrete around this place, and it's like an Easter egg hunt, and I still do it to this day, just because I want to.
Yeah, you can go up underneath the debarker over the
And my hands are this big.
and you can find Nick's handprints and the date.
Well, because like I would sit, they'd make me get out of the way, and I had to sit on like the chip pile or sit on a pile of dirt, and all I wanted to do was help. But you know, I'm 8, so
Right.
I'm not allowed to help, but I can watch from a distance. And then they would let me come down and put my handprints in the concrete, but I still do it to this day.
Yeah,
That'll
John
make a
Bruce
good-
poured concrete.
That'll make a good company bio one day.
Yeah, well, man, see if you can
When
find
you
all
get-
of Nick's hands.
Yeah, when you get to be 65, you're
Oh
like,
my gosh.
President and CEO, hand poured all this
By hand poured it. By hand, I smoothed it
Oh,
myself.
even better. Okay,
Yeah.
say there's a new generation that's coming after you.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
yeah,
your
yeah.
son, somebody else's son. The final test is you have to be able to find every handprint in the concrete. That's right. That's so.
my God.
There's
There you go.
here's a follow up to that. Okay, you talked about, both of you guys talked about how beautiful, or talked about it beautifully, how the family dynamic was, and it was a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, how hard is it going to be to walk away?
Oh, he isn't walking away.
I'm
Let's
here.
be very, very clear
I just
here.
don't get
He
paid.
just, that's not true.
So it's not truly
no,
retirement.
No,
I'm not on the payroll.
No.
Oh,
what,
gotcha.
That's right.
what Dad is doing is what every leader is supposed to do, which is give the room for the people he's put in place to do the job. So Dad is not retired, like, I'm not coming down there. He's going to come down here every day, but what he's doing is that where I view it that my job now is to carry the weight of the daily task.
well, it's
And-
kind of,
go-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you
you're
off,
good.
but the way you were saying it, it kind of makes me think of the old saying, like, a business or an entity that is not preparing for tomorrow's leaders is preparing to fail.
100%.
Because if your dad was walking away from this and because it's about to fail, then you know he would have failed because he didn't teach you and your siblings how to carry this on. And I think that's a great testament to be able to walk away and be like, here's the keys. I'll be that wisdom to come and help you on your sawmill every now and then, but it's not my problem anymore.
Well, the thing is that it's the village. Like, if you look at history, you know, you always had in a village, you know, in a community or a tribe, you know, you had the children, okay, that were being raised. Then you had the adult, the people that were in the middle of their age, their highest level of strength and understanding. And then you had the elder. And the elder always had just as important a role as all 3 roles. They're the keeper of the knowledge. Okay? So Dad isn't retiring from the standpoint of he's no longer engaged. Dad is the keeper of our knowledge and our wisdom. And so what we're doing right now is basically transitioning the daily task of effort, like you need to be here, okay, something's going wrong, so you got to get here early, leave late, you know, whatever you need to do. But there's always that you have, like, what we forget about so much is that we believe that if you retire, you're gone. When that step in the village is when that individual becomes the most valuable to the village. Because there's something to everything. And it's the younger you are, the less you know that. And so the older you get, the more you realize that. And so Dad is not retired. He's not retired in the stance of like, who's gone, who's just going to go enjoy vacation. No, he has given up, he has handed off, as he's supposed to, the daily doing that is now mine and my sisters and our teams to do. But his wisdom is now our greatest asset. So that's what I think about it.
And you heard what he said. The boss said he's still going to be here every day. He was telling you you're still coming to work. You're just not getting paid. I don't know if you caught
He
that.
tell me, he said, technology, Daddy, you're just a phone call away.
No, we
And,
FaceTime.
yeah, we FaceTime.
FaceTime, Zoom,
Yeah,
WhatsApp, whatever
yeah.
you want to do, man. Go anywhere in the world.
Well,
I can get you.
Right.
I can reach you. But yes, that's that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That gives me clarity
Yeah.
on what my role is.
Oh, you knew that before this. We talked about this 100,000 times.
All right, so here's kind of this can be a really fun question. What is something interesting that both of you want people to know about you or your business that they probably don't know? So
Do you want me to answer that, or do you want to answer that?
Well,
why don't you both take a crack at it?
I would say the thing that's really interested me is the awareness in our marketplaces of the reality from an environmental perspective, really what's going on. This generation, next generation, and even younger, the generation that's coming after him. and
They
his
care.
group, they really care. They really care about the environment. The generation before me, they were coming off the Korean War, World War II, Vietnam. Their focus was different. My generation's focus was different. And the generation of Nick's group, and then my grandchildren's generation, they're going to want to know about what they consume and what they do, and the knowledge that's available at the click of that, of the Google search engine, or just speak into your phone, ask it a question. They're going to ask the questions about, why should I make this choice to purchase with my hard-earned money? They're going to be the ultimate consumers because they're going to have the knowledge and they're going to understand what they're buying. And we have to have a story to tell. And we do have an incredible story to tell. And I think it's a very compelling story that once people understand it and they understand the science and the reality of it, it's going to open up a whole new view of how they consume.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your lead in there.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. So what Dad's saying is that the built environment, everybody's wondering about, carbon and our effect and how do we not, effectively destroy our planet. And what's amazing about this product is that it's carbon negative. There's more carbon embodied in wood fiber than it takes to actually get it to marketplace. Our supply chain is incredibly short. We can go from the forest up on the plateau to this mill to a flooring plant into somebody's home within a 50-mile circle. There's not much emissions off of that and stuff like that. So what's incredible is that the thing that everybody needs to know is that the greenest thing you can do in your home is build with wood, because at the end of the day, carbon sinks don't need to be something that we pump it back into the earth. They need to be our forests that we manage for working forests. Not all forests. Certain forests need to be managed for working forests. And then if we do that, we need to grow, sequester the carbon, embody the carbon, and store it in wood fiber, and then store it in our homes. And then we can become incredible. That is one piece to the sustainability problem that everybody's working to solve. And we already have an incredible product that grows in Franklin County, that grows in Middle Tennessee, North Alabama, North Georgia, that does it God's way. And so all we have to do is make sure that people know that story, and that's our unique thing, is that we are carbon negative. So if you want to improve your carbon footprint, build with wood.
It was interesting. We had an opportunity to put some wood into the rebuild and the remodel on the Sphere in Knoxville. And the architectural group that put that together, one of my son-in-laws was the lead architect on that, and he's from here in Franklin County.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really just a wonderful story there. Emmanuel Hubert Feely, born up here in Holder's Cove. And he did the redesign and got the contract for his company to design the rebuild on the Sphere. And in conversation with him, we started talking about utilizing some hardwood in that built environment for the remodel. Well, they wanted to get all the facts and all the information about what that meant. So we were able to do the study. University of Tennessee helped us with that. And we realized that that little bit of wood that we put in there sequestered the carbon of 1.5 automobiles every year. The carbon footprint of 1.5 automobiles
For a year.
for a year.
For a year, not
For a
every
year,
year.
yeah.
Once it's grown, it doesn't continue
That's
to
right.
sequester.
Once
Once
it-
it's
once-
embodied, once the
Yeah.
tree stops growing, it's embodied.
But what I'm saying is, to Nick's point, you know, we grow it, God grows it, we harvest it, we utilize it, we put it into the built environment, it grows back, we harvest it, we manufacture it, we put it in the built environment, and it's a cycle. It's a complete cycle that keeps coming back around. And, you know, it was just such a thrill to see that finished. And if anybody in the audience has a chance to go to Knoxville and actually visit the Sphere, you'll see white oak in the cabinetry when you walk into the visitor center. All the shelving, all the cabinetry that's exposed wood is white oak from Franklin County right here in Huntland.
Oh, that's amazing. I love the fact that you brought up that it's carbon negative, right? Like that's incredible to think.
Not neutral, negative.
Negative.
Exactly, because
It is an offset. It is a true, everybody's looking for offsets. It is a true offset.
yeah, that's incredible.
No, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to solve the problem that was already solved.
Yes.
And so, but you know, but it goes back to growth. The worst thing you can do to the forest is overconsume it. The best thing you can do for the forest is allow it to do its thing. And so we just have to love it, care for it, and be patient with it.
Yeah.
But cut it at the right time.
That's what I mean by patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
wonderful.
yes, carbon offset.
There you go. Ryan, do you have anything else for him?
I have one last question.
Oh no.
Well, I have one question. Sam's asked all the questions. So you said you came here in 92, right?
93.
93.
Yeah.
How different do you think our area is now compared to when you came here? And what is something you'd like to see with our area? Whether you'd like to see it achieve, what you'd like to see us achieve, grow, or regress?
Achieve.
Grow or regress.
So you rather a grow or regress.
It's either or.
Well, gosh, we can go in so many different directions. You could do a whole nother takeoff on that.
Oh yeah.
That's
I
a
know.
big question.
You know, I would like to, I'd like to
Can I ask you a question real quick? What is growth? So you know, like, and what is regression? So
Well,
to the
I
people
guess
in the
would
county.
you like to see the population continue to grow and us develop, stay the same, or would you like for us to regress in size and what we have a little bit and get back to like a little bit of a more of a smaller town culture?
Do you think that what is a sustainable place for us to be, in your opinion, Ryan?
I don't have an opinion on that, buddy.
Come on, man.
I mean, realistically, we know, and it's not just Tennessee. We know that folks are or it's not just Middle Tennessee, I should say. Folks are relocating to Tennessee because it's awesome. Like, that's the truth.
It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And
We got water. We've got the outdoors. Like, what do you want?
I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that I don't have an opinion. I do have a very much of an opinion. I just don't have enough factual evidence to base it to be argumentative one way or the other. I think that, and I don't know, maybe I'm just small-minded, but I like things the way they are.
Yeah.
And I guess change is scary. And I think back to, like you said, 93. I mean, I was only like 5. You were only like 6.
That's
I mean,
right.
We were kids, but I just think back to the way things were when we were younger, and I like that. I miss that. There's some things I like about now that when we've got a little older, the change in landscape, me personally, is a little bit discouraging at times. because growth occurs in places that you see that used to be a hayfield have now changed into a subdivision. So those things are
So
tough for
I have an
me.
opinion on that. So my real opinion on it is this, is that I think that if people want to move here, I think, come on. You know, if, who are we to keep Franklin County from others? You know, Franklin County is wonderful, but we need to stop building new, and we need to take care of what we've already built. Like this, taking up like going next door and building a new subdivision.
Yeah.
Next to a subdivision that has a bunch of empty houses in it, going down the street and building a new strip mall
Oh,
next
yeah,
to the strip
no,
mall that's already
you're right.
that's not full. Like, how about instead of just spending and spending and spending, instead we figure out how to utilize what we already have, get it full first,
Well, and like
and then if there's still growth, let's keep going. But before we decide that what we need is something else, let's take a moment, let's breathe and figure out what we can do with what we already have. Like, listen.
Can I take a shot at that?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You young guys, well, they're going at it. I mean, that's good. It's good stuff.
that's my opinion.
Years ago, there was a guy, went to the University of Georgia, and he did his business plan, graduated from college, got his MBA, went back to Columbus, Georgia, and went to work. Okay, he took his business plan that he wrote for his thesis for his MBA and took it and put it into practice. Okay, and it was to do contract clearing of what became a credit card as a service for large regional holding companies. So what he said, and he was a senior in college, in graduate school, he had the idea of, you know what we could do? We could do this for the banks, and they could offer credit at a limit to a person who was credit worthy in the form of a card, and it was the birth of the credit card. Okay, his name was Mr. Blanchard, and he was one of the founders of what we know as Synovus Corporation, at that time Columbus Bank and Trust. And I had the great privilege one time of sitting in my dad's office in South Georgia with my dad and Mr. Blanchard and my dad's controller, who was Mr. Blanchard's roommate in college. And my dad asked him the question, and it was about change. And Mr. Blanchard said, well, Bill, let me tell you something. Change is like trying to drink water out of a fire hose. You either figure it out or you drown. My challenge is figure it out, have a good plan, have a workable plan, and don't drown. Growth can drown you. You can be out of control. You cannot have enough sewer. You cannot have enough power. You cannot have enough water. You cannot have enough roads. You cannot have enough desks at schools. You can have all these things if you fail to plan. But you also plan too far ahead and go broke and bankrupt the county before you get there.
Yeah.
So I think that good leadership, thoughtful leadership, that doesn't stick their head in the sand and does it in the right way. Growth done right can be a wonderful thing.
Listen.
Growth that's not done correctly can lead to lots and lots and lots of problems. And that's where the challenge is, I think, for Franklin County. And for quite frankly, I think that goes for almost anything you do in life.
Yeah, that's wonderful the way you tied that in and the birth of the credit card and all that. I think that's incredible, and I think that's a great time for us to sign off. And I want to thank you guys for doing this. It's been a fun journey to learn about the history and hear you guys talk about it so passionately. So thank you, Nordeck.
Our pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Nick. We appreciate it
welcome.
so much.
very much so. Appreciate it.
And to everybody out there listening, we appreciate y'all for staying with us and listening to this incredible story. We'll be back soon with the next one. Thanks.